I never expected to discover heartbreaking struggles behind Brazil's 10 richest in 2024. I will never forget the moment it hit me, like a wave crashing down, pulling me under. The air was thick with secrets, whispers swirling in the shadows of wealth. Each name on that list was like a golden ticket shining bright. I pictured them, sipping champagne, surrounded by luxury. But beneath it all, there were cracks. Dark stories hiding behind polished smiles. I felt the tremors of their lives, their pains echoing in my chest. How could those at the top have such sorrow? Take Anna, a billionaire tech mogul. Her empire built on innovation. And yet, her heart shattered when her son was lost in a tragic accident. I could almost see her, trembling hands gripping the edge of her glass, tears staining her designer dress. Behind the glitz, a mother crying in silence, trying to smile for the cameras. And then there was Ricardo, the oil tycoon, standing on the balcony of his penthouse. The city lights twinkled below, but all he could see were the ghosts of his past. A family torn apart by greed, betrayals playing out like a cruel game. I imagined the weight of his regret, a tightness in his chest that no amount of money could ease. I wanted to know more. The walls of wealth didn't keep out the pain. In the corners of lavish parties, I caught hints of loneliness, fragile moments that pierced my heart. A voice, trembling, shared stories of love lost and dreams shattered, buried beneath ambition. I pictured myself sitting in a quiet corner, listening, feeling their struggles intertwining with mine. But just as I thought I might piece it all together, a woman slipped into my thoughts. Luciana, the fashion mogul, known for her fierce style, hiding behind a facade of confidence. One evening, the fashion show turned chaotic, whispers of scandal threading through the air. She stood, visibly shaking, when truths about her family began surfacing. Was she really as powerful as she seemed, or just another soul fighting to be seen? The closer I got to their stories, the more chilling questions emerged. Who were they when the lights went down? What sacrifices did they make in their ascension? I felt a knot in my stomach, a desperate need to uncover the truth pulsing through me. With every fleeting moment, the tension built. Would their stories intertwine? Could I unravel the fabric of their lives? And then, the reveal came like a thunderclap. A hidden alliance, a connection between all the rich and all their buried secrets. As I leaned in closer, my heart raced. Could one truth, one single piece of evidence shatter everything? The thrill of the chase electrified my senses. I needed to know. What would they do when their world crumbled? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon, and while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. As days turned into weeks, the revelations from that vibrant soiree echoed in my mind, wrapping around my thoughts like vines smothering a once thriving tree. I couldn't shake the feeling that beneath the unyielding facades of grandeur, a storm was brewing, one that threatened to uproot everything I believed about wealth and happiness. I returned to Anna's story, consumed by the layers of grief she carried. I imagined her still seated at her grand dining table, the plates untouched, the laughter of friends drowning in a silence that felt like an indictment of her own failure to protect her child. I wished to reach out, to somehow bridge the chasm that separated her pain from my understanding. Yet I felt like an imposter encroaching on sacred ground. Then, there was Ricardo. Each photograph of him in the tabloids seemed to conceal a deeper anguish. Was he truly the villain his former friends claimed he was? Or was he merely a weary man grappling with the shards of broken relationships? The city beneath his balcony glimmered like a false promise, a treasure that had proven empty. The next article I wrote focused on him, attempting to unfold the complexities behind his choices, but the words felt reduced, powerless against the gravity of his situation. But it was Luciana who haunted me the most. I had been drawn to her fierce energy, her striking presence that lit up every room, and yet there was a fragility beneath her exterior. The whispers caught my ear just outside the designer boutique where she showcased her latest collection. A former partner, someone once close enough to know her vulnerabilities, let slip that Luciana was fighting battles no one else could see. Always the bravest of us. But is she really fighting for fashion, or just running from herself? He had remarked, judgment-laden and revealing a kind of rough sympathy. I began following her online presence, obsessively watching her live streams, where her smile felt rehearsed, her laughter just a touch too loud. In the comments, beneath the layers of adoring fans, I found lonely pleas, desperate messages from people trying to connect with her, but stripped away by the impossibility of her celebrated existence. One evening, I gathered the courage to send her a message. I didn't expect it to appear in the crowded inbox of a mogul. How could she even notice a single, quiet plea among the cacophony of voices demanding her attention? Still, I poured my heart into that message, sharing my observations about how society often mistook success for strength, how we all carried scars unseen. Days passed, and just as I started doubting the wisdom of my vulnerability, my phone lit up with notification after notification. Luciana had seen my message, but the response wasn't what I expected. Instead of some profound acknowledgement, I received a single cryptic line. "Who are you to judge the strength of a heart?" The words struck like thunder, reinforced by self-doubt. Did I misread her? Was I merely another voyeur of her pain? But beneath that sting was an ember of possibility. She hadn't dismissed me. There was a crack in her armor, a fracture that perhaps could lead us both to a deeper understanding. I felt conflicted, unsure whether my intentions remained purely journalistic or had morphed into a quest for connection. Perhaps my learning went beyond the mere act of exposing truths. Perhaps the stories forged bonds that could both bless and break us. The moments that followed unfurled like a rich tapestry. I observed how kindness flourished when people least expected it. An assistant, bogged down by the demands of life, had her hands full one day. Rather than resent her for being in my way while I attempted to get my bearings within these grand worlds, I offered to help, and her gratitude painted my heart warm. It was a reminder that even amid the tumult, there were chances for empathy. But just as the strands of hope began to weave a narrative of light, a heavy blanket of uncertainty loomed larger. Outside the dazzling avenues of Sao Paulo, whispers escalated into full-blown allegations. A corrupt underbelly, scandalous ties linking all 10 billionaires began circulating through social media. Antonio, the youngest of the group, had vanished, and suddenly fears of both retribution and betrayal loomed a threat to the fragile alliances I sensed. I could barely breathe. With Antonio gone, I realized the depth of their connections and the consequences lying ahead. Would they stand together against the wave rising to crash upon them? Or would this revelation spiral their worlds deeper into chaos? My heart thudded wildly in my chest as a knot of dread formed. I could sense the impending storm, but in this world where power was currency, relations were fragile, and one truth could reshape the lives of many. Only time would tell who would emerge unscathed and what hearts would shatter in the process. The days bled into each other, a blur of whispered conversations and erratic news leaks. I found myself paralyzed by the weight of uncertainty that hung in the air, as if an invisible thread had drawn tighter around the throats of all the players in this shadowy game. The implications of Antonio's disappearance sent ripples through their community, and as I listened to the clamor in the streets, I feared that we were at the brink of a full-scale meltdown. Latent tensions turned into open animosities, igniting a war of words and rumors so fierce they threatened to consume everything in their wake. Social media became a battlefield, festooned with accusations and half-truths, and the glimmering lives I had once envied now felt marred by deep-seated fears. The very foundations of their wealth and privilege were at stake, but more than material loss, I sensed a deep fracture emerging within their souls. In the midst of this tumult, I caught a glimpse of Luciana at a gala, the most coveted event of the season. It felt out of place to approach her surrounded by the glittering elite indulging in their opulence. Yet something compelled me to attend. I could feel the weight of unspoken words pressing against my chest. Perhaps I sought solace in her presence. Or perhaps I longed to unravel the echoes of our conversation further. I arrived just as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting an amber glow that illuminated the elegant facade of the grand estate. But as I stepped inside, my heart sank. Gone was the vibrant energy that characterized past gatherings. Gossamer smiles glimmered across faces, but I sensed the shadows lurking in the corners. Collective unease permeated the air. I spotted Luciana amidst the crowds, her laughter echoing against the empty walls. Yet behind her vibrant facade lay a hollowness I couldn't ignore as I navigated the throng. I was drawn to a quiet corner where Luciana stood, her chin held high, shoulders squared, but in that poised moment, I observed a flicker of vulnerability as she spoke, her voice trembling undertones that were drowned out by the buzzing crowd. It shocked me to notice the juxtaposition. The woman revered for her strength was, in the circle of her closest ties, merely playing a role to stave off despair. And then it happened. Ricardo appeared, emerging from the shadows with an intensity that could slice through the din. His eyes, usually ignited with determination, were clouded with anguish. The sight of him sent a jolt through my heart. The tabloids had stripped away his humanity, but in this moment, he was distinctly human and heartbreakingly fragile. They exchanged words, barely above a whisper, but I could feel the tendrils of unspoken troubles wrapping around them. I hesitated, caught in a storm of choices. Was I meant to interrupt their moment, to bridge their shared pain? Or was my role merely to observe, documenting a tragedy unfolding in real time? An inexplicable force urged me closer, and as I did, I caught snippets of their conversation. He spoke urgently, his voice a magnetic pull, filled with an earnestness that momentarily quelled my apprehensions. "Luciana, you shouldn't have to carry this alone. I can help, but you need to trust me." But before she could respond, a loud crash echoed through the hall. Glass shattered, and the crowd gasped as a storm of whispered questions and sudden panic rippled outward. A group of reporters had barged in, cameras flickering like fireflies drawn to the tumult. My instincts kicked in and I pushed through the throng. The atmosphere shifted. The attention had turned, and the stakes immediately felt weighted with consequence. My heart raced as I captured the moment through the lens of my camera, framed by the juxtaposition of wealth and notoriety that now shared a stage of chaos brought on by one young man's disappearance. But beneath that chaos, an unexpected connection took root between Luciana and Ricardo. Their eyes locked, and in that fragile instant, an unspoken alliance formed amid the chaos. As the clamor overwhelmed me, I realized that hidden connections were forming, stronger than the barriers of fame and despair. For the first time, I felt an undeniable urge to expose not merely the headlines but the stories behind the headlines, the fractured hearts battling against a storm stronger than the forces outside. But as rumors swirled and alliances wavered, I was faced with a gut-wrenching realization. Reports of threats on Antonio's life began to surface, leaving me breathless. How could these powerful elites descend into such darkness? And what risks were they willing to take to protect their interests? My mind raced with the implications. If they were capable of this, what horrors lay ahead for someone as vulnerable as Luciana? The clock ticked on wildly, and I knew I was teetering on the brink of revealing more than just stories. I was standing at the threshold of lives tangling together in heart-wrenching ways, each thread woven with grief, betrayal, and passion. As the night deepened, I realized that my bond with Luciana and Ricardo had evolved, placing me squarely in their path. And just as I began to comprehend my role within the chaos, my phone buzzed ominously. The message that illuminated the screen was from an unknown number. "You're getting too close. Stay away from them or face the consequences." An icy chill runs down my spine, and the weight of hidden truths felt heavier than ever before. I stood at the precipice of a story waiting to unravel, but realized I may be entangled in a drama that could very well cost me not only my career but potentially my life. The events ahead promised danger, deception, and a search for answers that might lead to devastating revelations. In the shadows of Sao Paulo's wealth, the stakes had become more than I could ever have imagined. The moment I read the chilling text, my breath caught in my throat, silencing the noise around me. My fingers hovered over the screen, weighing my options. Should I respond with defiance? Or would it be wiser to heed the warning and step back from this tangled web of despair? But how could I? The faces of Luciana and Ricardo swam before me, their masks slipping pain etched in every contour of their expressions. I was not merely an observer now. I was a witness to their buried anguish, a guardian of their untold story. Yet the road ahead seemed fraught with peril. In that flicker of indecision, the vibrant setting of the gala felt none too glamorous anymore. It transformed into a vast cage, glittering bars encasing those within as the whispers evolved into heated debates. I caught a glimpse of Luciana's determined face, a candle fighting against the breath of a tempest. Fueled by some unyielding spirit, she stepped away from Ricardo's side, leaving him momentarily lost in thought. My feet moved on instinct, eager to reach her before she could fade further into the chaos around her. As I rounded a corner, I found her alone, teetering against the elegant wall adorned with lush arrangements of white roses. It was a striking contrast to the turmoil beneath her surface. I approached carefully, feeling the weight of her solitude like a leaden blanket. "Luciana," I breathed softly, careful not to startle her. She turned, her expression a mixture of wariness and unguarded hope. "Why do you keep following me?" she asked, vulnerability shimmering beneath her poised exterior. "Haven't you captured enough chaos tonight?" "Because I see you struggling," I replied, my voice steady despite the turmoil of emotions roiling within. "I don't just see the glamorous parties or the headlines. I see the person behind them," her brow furrowed. We stood suspended in that moment, the cacophony of the event fading into the background until we were cocooned in an unspeakable bubble of understanding. "Maybe that's my problem," she murmured. "Everyone sees what they want to see. What do you want?" I dared to ask, my heart thrumming in resonance with her unspoken fear. For a second, her gaze veered, searching the dimly lit corners of the hall as if seeking an answer among the swirling shadows. To stop pretending, she finally confessed. To break free from the perfection that's suffocating me. Just as the weight of her words settled between use and electrifying truth that made the air thick with Longjinga, sudden roar erupted from the gala's main hall. I instinctively grasped her arm, pulling her closer, a reflex against the mounting chaos and uncertainty. "What was that?" She narrowed her eyes, her voice barely above a whisper. "I think it's something worse than what we imagined," I replied, seeking certainty in a storm of doubts. With the fabric of the gala unraveling, we navigated cautiously towards the sound, entering a scene that felt decidedly more violent than the pressing anxieties we were already battling. A journalist was confronting Ricardo, aggression driving their questioning into the sharp edges of scandal. "Why are you covering for Luciana?" The reporter sneered, pushing a microphone into his face. "Is it because you're scared of the truth? Or is there more to your relationship than the public wants to know?" Ricardo stood firm, Jamie the reporter relentlessly pressing into the fissures of trust that formed in his wake. It was a brutal game of chess, and righteousness was transformed into a weapon. "Enough!" Luciana's voice rose above the din, filled with an unexpected ferocity. She stepped forward, arms raised in a show of defiance that shocked everyone, including Ricardo himself. "You don't know anything about us? Or what's at stake here?" It was a strange blend of distress and power, witnessing her stand amidst the bubbling animosity. The heat of the moment ignited something deep within me. Perhaps, in this brewing storm, her courage could inspire others hiding behind their facades. But just as I had begun to hope for a shift in the dynamics, the lights flickered, then plunged the room into darkness. A collective gasp echoed, hearts quickened, and the very air crackled with tense uncertainty. The crowd murmured in confusion, but I didn't hesitate. I gripped Luciana's wrist, determined not to lose her amidst the chaos. "Stay close," I whispered, leaning into her ear. It was then that I heard Ida faint, frantic scream breaking through the thick veil of darkness. The sound sent shivers coursing down my spine and set my instincts into overdrive. "We need to get out," I urged, but as I turned to guide her back, the lights flickered back to life. What I saw next rooted me to the spot, terror rising in my chest. In the center of the hall was a toppled table, surrounded by gasps and scattered chairs. But what truly sent shockwaves through me was the figure slumped against the flow or a body sprawled in an unnatural position. The collective breath of the crowd caught, and the pallor of realization settled over us like fog. The very heart of São Paulo's elite had been marred in a way that seemed impossible to fathom. Snapping into focus, I realized with crushing clarity. It was Antonio. New fears gripped me as I turned back to Luciana. Her face was etched with a mixture of horror and disbelief, her eyes glistening with betrayal and loss. Neither of us could voice the depth of our realization the stakes of this game had exceeded all bounds. I reached for her hand as shock rippled through the hall, the weight of our reality grounding us even as our hearts raced with dread. And as the truth of Antonio's fate settled into the fabric of this wretched story, I knew we were plunging deeper into darkness, a path with no clear light ahead. The moment felt profound, a turning point resonating loudly against the backdrop of our lives, each heartbeat carrying forward with a promise that we hadn't yet hit the bottom of our descent. The battle was most certainly far from over. The echo of Antonio's name hung heavily in the air, a bitter memento that swirled around me like the smoky tendrils of trepidation. I felt Luciana stiffen beside me, her grip nearly palpable as her mind began to race through an avalanche of thoughts and emotions, tangling together like the embers of a dying flame. In the aftermath of that violent revelation, the gala's lavish decor transformed dramatically into a crude reminder of the fragility of life and the harsh realities we all secretly navigated. I caught sight of Ricardo, his expression morphing dangerously from anger to a sheer horror that seemed to cut deeper than any serrated blade. He stared at the chaos surrounding Antonio's fallen figure, as if somehow grappling with the implications of it all, rooted between guilt and defensiveness. I could see the turmoil festering in their eyes, each racket of unfulfilled intentions ringing loud within a space once alive with ambition and pretense. "Is he?" Luciana's voice trembled as she sought the truth, her need for confirmation almost palpable. "I can't tell," I said cautiously, my heart pounding. "But we have to get you out of here first." "No!" She shook her head vehemently, tears glinting in the corners of her eyes. "He needs help, he can't just lie there." A determination ignited within her, fierce and unfurling despite the fear consuming her expression that I could sense the walls closing in. "Luciana, it's too dangerous. You can't be involved in this." My words felt weak against the fierce glow fueling her anger. "And run away like everyone else." Her voice hardened. "No. I'm done hiding from the truth." But what did the truth matter now? Wasn't it already too late for noble gestures? Yet here she was, defying the very instincts urging us to flee. There was stubbornness mixed with fear in her resolve, a desperate need to extend compassion where none seemed forthcoming. "I need to make sure he's okay," she insisted, turning toward the huddle gathering around Antonio. I shifted my gaze, scanning the crowd for support, but they were more fixated on the unfolding drama rather than the well-being of the collapsed figure. Whispers ricocheted around us, and I could feel the vibrations of a world shifting dangerously on its axis, gossiping, speculating, waiting to pounce on whatever sordid tale might unveil itself. A sudden burst of activity brought me back to the present. I saw the venue's organizer bustling across the floor, brandishing a phone. They were likely calling for help, but would anyone arrive in time? My instincts screamed at me to keep Luciana at bay as the frantic energy in the room morphed into sheer pandemonium. "I can't let you do this alone," I finally declared, my resolve tracing the sharp edges of uncertainty. If Luciana was to step boldly into this chaos, I would not allow her to go unaccompanied. She met my gaze, a storm of gratitude and fear swirling in her depths. "Thank you," she whispered, the subtle vulnerability striking a chord in the chasm of my heart. Together, we forged ahead, weaving through shifting bodies, some shocked, others obliviously curious, until we finally reached Antonio. The sight of him crumpled on the floor was unbearable, shadows deepening the contours of his features and highlighting the vulnerability usually disguised beneath layers of bravado. I knelt beside him, lucidity being swallowed by turmoil as my mind tried to ascertain the immediate needs. "Antonio," Luciana called out gently, her voice breaking through the hush that settled around our group. Can you hear me? He lay still, but after a few agonizing seconds, his eyes fluttered open momentarily, confusion etching deeper into his features. But instead of fighting for clarity, he yielded against the battle to stay present. Luciana, the whisper drifted like a soft gust of wind, barely tracing the edges of consciousness. Stay with us, I urged, frantically searching for any sign of immediate assistance. Shadows deepened across the crowd as soon as my eyes met Ricardo's. He stood perilously at the edge of our crude rescue mission, indecision gripping him. Move! Ricardo barked suddenly, jolting forward as one of the paramedics, an off-duty officer drawn in by the chaos, made their way through the thronging crowd. Get out of the way! As Ricardo took charge, directing those around us with urgency, I focused on Luciana, her hand firmly clasped around Antonio's, a gesture that resonated with everything we were fighting against: fear and helplessness. It became a powerful thread binding them amidst the grim uncertainty. I'm here, she whispered soothingly, as if drawing strength through sheer will. I'm right here. But just as the paramedics knelt beside Antonio, the lights flickered once more, plunging us back into an uncertain darkness. It wasn't a full blackout, but the confusion took root with splitting terror. My heart raced, fingers instinctively clutching Luciana's hand tighter, even as I felt the icy grip of dread snake up my spine. What's happening? Her voice danced on the edge of panic. Then chaos erupted, the echoes of bodies falling, shouting. A rush that seemed to pull us into yet another abyss before any sense of balance could be established. The officers scrambled as muffled yells pierced through the fog of uncertainty, the cracks of panic rippling across the crowd, a fresh wave of anxiety pushing people away from us. Before I could comprehend the implosion occurring around us, a piercing scream shrouded by the tumult broke free, the sound a jarring premonition reverberating deeply in my chest. Luciana's gaze locked with mine, the fear radiating from her as the truth glared strikingly. This night had morphed into something I hadn't anticipated. An unraveling disaster intertwining the fates of the people we had once hurried to understand. Luciana! I shouted above the clamor, desperately trying to pull her closer, but I could feel her slipping away, caught in the undertow of the Crowdan insistent force threatening to tear us apart. And just as she vanished from my grasp, I felt the world shift violently once more. Something in the atmosphere chilled me, a revelation brewing beneath layers of deceptions, a new peril rising to the surface. In the void of lost light and her silhouette fading from reach, it struck me hard. Beneath the glittering surface of wealth and connection, something sinister was awaiting its cue. But before I could process this thought fully, the darkness surged around me. What I didn't know was that the unraveling had only just begun. The room pulsed with a host of emotions, each one sharper than the last. A cacophony of longing and despair filling the air. The flickering lights cast frantic shadows across my surroundings as I lunged forward, desperate to find a way back to Luciana. Panic clawed at my chest, tight and relentless like a vice, my heart screaming for clarity as bodies swarmed around me. Luciana! I bellowed, my voice barely echoing amid the screech of voices and muffled cries. It was a futile gesture, but I couldn't let the weight of this night drag me into submission. In the swirling mass of confusion, I stumbled forward, straining to catch any glimpse of her familiar figure. And that's when I saw a glint of silver on the floor, brushing against the wall. My heart leaped as I crouched down, fingers brushing over a necklace, one that was unmistakably hers. Panic took on a new form, a cold finger tracing the back of my neck, warning me of impending doom. No, 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 I repeated, breathless, my pulse surging as I pocketed the necklace. The realization hit me like a thunderclap. If she hadn't fallen among the crowd, where was she? The haunting echoes of fear coiling tightly around my thoughts propelled me forward, driving me through the thronging bodies still concentrated on that spot where a life hung in the balance. Ricardo's frantic voice pierced through the chaos, directing people to clear a path for the paramedics. I caught sight of him carved among the figures, his face taut with urgency and concern. I sprinted toward him, throwing my weight against the tide of hysteria. Have you seen Luciana? I gasped as I reached him, the grip of my dread choking my words. He hesitated, his brow furrowing. "She was right next to you," he replied, the guilt bleeding into his tone. "After everything went dark, too thought she was with you." As panic climbed in the back of my throat, I jerked my hand through my hair. The reality striking me hard, it was one thing to feel helpless beside Antonio, but to lose Luciana within the confines of this chaos felt inescapably dire. "We have to find her." Ricardo nodded abruptly, a resolve sparking in his eyes. "Okay. I'll check the other side of the room, try to stay put. I'll find her." With that, he turned, slipping through the tumult like a rock cast into a river. I glanced back toward Antonio, the paramedics now working tirelessly to revive him, but the tendrils of worry pulled me, forcing my feet to move elsewhere. I maneuvered further into the crowd, each step a challenge, every face passing by a reminder of Luciana's absence. It wasn't just the physical separation. It was the looming unknown of what fate awaited her in this atmosphere of dread. "Luciana!" I shouted again, my voice hoarse, the vibrations reflected in the walls, amplifying the solitude in my heart. I grasped at fleeting glimpses of familiar faces, yearning for anyone to help me, to provide a moment of clarity. Suddenly, a figure broke away from the mass, and recognition surged through me. It was Mara, a well-known friend of Luciana's, someone who shone a light in times of darkness. "Mara!" I yelled, relief washing over me as I approached her. "Have you seen her?" I asked desperately, my composure fraying at the edges. Her eyes darted around anxiously. "She was here a moment ago." I lost sight of her before she could finish speaking. The lights flickered once again, a malicious flickering that threatened to extinguish hope for anyone still there. "No." I couldn't hold back the plea that broke forth, drowning in a tide of desperation. Mara reached out, her eyes shining with shared fear. "We have to look this way." She gestured toward a dimly lit corridor leading to the kitchen area. With no time left to spare, we bolted through the narrow passage, a flickering emergency light barely illuminating the way. I could hear faint murmurs and cries growing quieter as we left the main area behind. Mara and I burst into the kitchen, and with it came an overwhelming scent of burnt food, nothing but remnants of what was once a beautiful evening spoiled by this disaster. The kitchen was empty, but a sense of foreboding lurked within, thickening the air, bubbling beneath the surface like a whirlpool waiting to consume us whole. "Luciana!" I shouted yet again, my voice trembling within the oppressive silence. And then I heard a distant, muffled sound. It was faint but unmistakable as we moved deeper into the kitchen. A cry? No. A whimper, a heart-wrenching sound resonating from the storeroom at the back. Mara was only a step behind me, instinctively moving closer as I reached the door. It creaked eerily as I swung it open, revealing a small, darkened space. Inside, the shadows licked the corners, and low words of despair broke from the depths. "Please no." Luciana's voice, so raw and fragile, shattered through the haze, igniting a flame of urgency within me. "Luciana!" I called out, my heart racing as I stepped over the threshold, my gaze battling against the shadows. And there she was, huddled in the corner, her frame trembling, and an unmistakable figure looming over her. In that unforgiving moment, clarity cut through like broken glass amidst the chaos. She was not alone. "Get away from her!" I shouted, anger surging within me like a wildfire. The silhouette turned, revealing a face I never thought I would see here. In this moment of vulnerability, Victor, a face from Luciana's past, someone who had been cloaked in distance, appearing now with a threatening edge. "You shouldn't have let her get this close," he taunted, a cruel smile playing across his lips. "She belongs with those who have power, not with someone like you." And in that chilling instant, the heartbreak of our tangled histories crashed against the present, the lives we had each once led, converging amidst the ruins of our choices. And with each passing heartbeat, it became clear that the risk we faced was greater than any of us had expected. "Victor." My voice trembled with authority, though I knew a confrontation here could shatter the fragile glass between us. His eyes sparkled with malice, and in that singular moment, I realized that both Luciana and this night were teetering on the brink of chaos. The truth about the lives intertwined in this room whispered promises and threats, ripples from the past unraveling into a storm far more devastating than anything I could comprehend. And as Victor stepped closer, the gleam of steel caught my eye, a knife, resting dangerously against his side. My breath hitched, the battle ahead felt insurmountable. But there were certain truths that needed to be revealed, threads that needed to be reclaimed. The depths of darkness behind every choice would storm our lives in ways I was about to uncover. In that fleeting moment, amid the shadows of the past, I felt the tides shift, hope flickering alongside fear, a revelation I was not ready to embrace yet, but one that would alter everything I knew. Would I be strong enough to face it all? And with Luciana still clinging to hope, would it be enough to break these chains tethering us both? The oppressive darkness in the storeroom felt suffocating, a weight heavier than any fear I'd ever faced. As I stood there, heart racing, the sight of Luciana on the floor, vulnerable and tiny, tore at my very essence. Victor, with his malevolent smile, was a cruel reminder of the past I had fought so hard to escape, and now he threatened to pull both Luciana and me back into that abyss. Get away from her, I shouted again, pushing my voice past the panic that threatened to suffocate me. I wasn't just facing Victor. I was confronting every moment of weakness that had brought me to this point. For a heartbeat, the room felt temporarily frozen, time catching its breath as if the universe paused to assess the imminent conflict. Luciana's wide eyes shone with fear, but beneath that layer of dread, I glimpsed the fierce spirit I'd fallen in love with. She was still there, fighting to be seen beneath the layers of anxiety surrounding her. You think you can protect her? Victor sneered, stepping closer. Every word dripped in venom. She's not yours to save. I clenched my fists, grounding myself in that moment, the weight of the necklace from my pocket pressing against me, a tangible reminder of who I was fighting for and why. Luciana, I murmured, aiming to soothe her, to tether her back to reality. I'm here. With each hushed word, I hoped to pull her spirit back, even as Victor loomed larger, a dark storm within the fragile sanctuary we had built. You don't get to decide who she belongs to. Not now, not ever. Victor's laughter was sharp, cutting through the fragile air between us. You think love can save you? Love is nothing but a vehicle for pain. He stepped forward, like a shadow threatening to swallow my light whole. Look at her. She won't come out unscathed, no matter how hard you or why. My voice echoed against the walls, and with it, I released the trembling weight of despair. Luciana is stronger than you know. She has faced far worse than you, and she's still here. You will not take her from me. The vehemence of my words surprised even me, igniting a flicker of resolve deep within. I silently begged myself to stand tall, to remain steadfast, no matter what chaos Victor unleashed. Enough with your bravado, he spat, his grin morphing into something wicked. Let's see how strong she really is. Suddenly, he lunged, and time splintered into a cacophony of motion. Adrenaline surged through me, instincts kicking in as I moved to shield Luciana. The knife glinted dangerously under the flickering light, a sharp promise of violence. No, I shouted, launching myself forward, the sound of our bodies connecting echoing like thunder. The sharp edge of fear sliced through me, but when our bodies collided, I felt the fierce protective energy coursing through my veins. I couldn't falter now, not for Luciana. We wrestled, the moment teetering on a knife's edge between desperation and determination. I could feel the strength of his grip, but I wouldn't relent. I shifted, using all my might to push him back, and in that instant, a sliver of hope emerged. Perhaps, just perhaps, I could wrest control from this chaos. Luciana's breath caught, a soft gasp that echoed in the stillness of the storeroom. No, she cried, fear lacing her voice, pleading to both Victor and me. Her cry wove through my resolve, wrapping around my heart like vines, holding me steady even as the confrontation continued to spiral. But then, just as the tide seemed to turn, Victor seized my moment of distraction, twisting and pushing me back with a savage strength. I stumbled, the air whooshing from my lungs as I struggled to regain my footing, each chaotic sound resonating painfully in my ears. "Come on, Luciana," I urged, trying to find her in the corners of the fear. "Get up, please." The sight of her crumpled, inseparable from that memory of vulnerability, tore at me. But in the depths of her despair, she found courage. I watched as she slowly stood, her gaze burning with a newfound defiance that was both a shock and a revelation. "You don't get to decide my fate, Victor," she shouted, fiery conviction, punctuating her words like daggers. Victor turned, startled, and in that split second, it was clear that I hadn't fought this battle alone. We were two sides of the same coin, both unwilling to kneel to the ghosts of our past. The moment he faltered, I lunged again, adrenaline roaring in my ears, and together we fought, me determination weaving with her resolve, our anguish transforming into a shield. The interplay of our hearts forged an unexpected bond, a silent promise echoing through our struggle. As we cornered Victor backwards, the air grew thick with tension, each heartbeat drumming out the urgency of salvation. The knife lay just inches away from escaping his grasp, swelling the potential for catastrophe. But suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the main room, shattering the moment of equilibrium we had forged. A chaotic ruckus erupted, the sounds of voices raised in shock and fear filtering into our space. I glanced at Luciana, her eyes wide with terror, and felt the grip of foreboding clutch at my chest. The world outside was in chaos, and our little sanctuary threatened to crumble around us. "Stay close to me, Luciana," I urged, the fear pressing into my veins like ice, knowing that our escape from Victor's grasp wasn't the end, but perhaps just another beginning of a struggle we had both yet to understand. And then, as Victor regained a semblance of control, he grinned, a devilish look piercing through the darkness. "You may have won this battle, but I assure you the war is far from over." With that, he slipped from my grasp, retreating into the shadows, leaving a silence that felt pregnant with uncertainty. "Luciana," I whispered, turning to her, breathless and wrought with confusion. "Are you all right?" But just as I met her gaze, horror dawned on her face, and she gasped, pointing behind me. A realization struck me with the force of a tidal wave. There was another presence looming in the dim light, a figure moving toward us from the storeroom entrance. I whirled around, dread swirling in the pit of my stomach. Who or what was coming? And as my heart raced, uncertainty spilled into my hopes, shattering the fragile promise of safety we had just begun to craft together. "Luciana, get behind me," I commanded, for I knew we weren't out of danger yet, and the truth that lingered in the air licked at our feet like fire, waiting to consume everything in its path. The air in the storeroom had quickly turned thick, a mixture of fear and rising dread that weighed heavily on my chest. The figure stepping forward was cloaked in shadow, but there was no mistaking the air of menace that emanated from them. A swift glance at Luciana revealed the terror etched into her features, and I felt my heart plummet. This was not over. The battle was simply morphing into something far more dangerous than I had anticipated. "Who are you?" I demanded, my voice steady but laced with an unmistakable tremor. Every instinct urged me to protect Luciana, to shield her from this new threat. But as the figure took a step into the dim light, the chill gleamed off their face, revealing not a stranger but someone who had once been closely entwined in my life, the face of a past I had long buried. "Marco." My voice fell to a whisper, disbelief washing over me. It couldn't be. The last time I had seen him he had vanished without a trace, leaving a gaping wound in my heart. Beneath the layers of shock lay tangled emotions, a rush of nostalgia, anger, and guilt crashing like waves against a fragile shore. "Surprised to see me?" He chuckled, but there was no humor in his eyes, only a distorted reflection of the man I used to know. "You've always had a knack for attracting trouble." "Trouble? You think this is some kind of game?" My temper flared, but as I spoke, the fragile connection I once shared with him pulled at my very core, threatening to unravel all the progress I had made in the years I had fought to leave behind me. "Marco, you should leave," Luciana piped up, her voice shaking but resolute. I felt her courage fortify me, but it was not enough to dispel the coldness creeping into my veins. You don't understand what you're walking into. Oh, I understand perfectly well, he replied, arrogance wrapping around his words like a shroud. Victor and I have a history, and you two are only pawns in this game. He cast a disdainful glance at Victor's retreating form, then settled his gaze back on us. You think you can escape him? You think love will shield you from the chaos? My heart sank, his words echoing Victor's taunts, steeped in a darkness that threatened to blot out the glimmers of hope we had fought so hard to find. Memories surged forth each moment we had spent escaping the clutches of the past. The nights Luciana and I had dreamed of a brighter future. Yet here we were, standing on the precipice of despair once again. Enough, I shouted, my voice breaking the suffocating silence that had enveloped us. You're wrong. Luciana is not a pawn. We are not a game. Is that so? Marco sneered, his eyes glimmering with a menacing undercurrent. Tell me, how strong do you think you really are? When it comes down to it, what would you sacrifice for her? The question hung in the air, heavy and unsettling. I glanced at Luciana, her fiery spirit momentarily eclipsed by doubt. Was our love enough to shield us from the truths lurking in the depths of our pasts? And then it struck me how isolating it felt to confront these ghosts alone, while I had believed we were embarking on this journey side by side. The weight of my unresolved past threatened to consume me, each unhealed wound pulsating in time with my heartbeat, and I could see the flickering shadows of uncertainty reflected in Luciana's eyes. Before I could reply, chaos erupted again. From outside, footsteps pounded towards us, voices merging into a feverish cacophony. Time wavered as if holding its breath, and then there was a shattering sound, a door flung open, crashing against the wall. The light spilled into the storeroom, bright and blinding, and in its rush, it brought more confusion. Figures rushed in, faces blurred with urgency and fear. There you are, shouted someone, their shadow casting grim shapes against the walls. Panic tightened around us, and I felt the world tilt beneath my feet. We need to move. They're coming. Who's coming? I demanded, cutting through the torrential flow of emotion. My mind raced. Victor, Marco, the remnants of my past. Was there even a chance of escape now that everything had spiraled into a whirlpool of chaos? Victor's followers. They want both of you, the newcomer replied, desperate eyes darting between us. He's unleashed them. The reality of the situation crashed over me like a relentless tide. Luciana, we have to go, I urged, clutching her hand tighter, but Marco stepped between us, his shadow a looming threat. You can't stop what's coming, he warned, bitterness seeping into his tone. You have no idea what you're facing. Time split in two, the past clamoring for my attention while the threat of an unknown future loomed before us. Would our love survive the storm, or would it be engulfed in the relentless tide of darkness that Victor had summoned? As the chaotic footsteps drew closer, I felt a surge of determination ignite once more. We will figure this out together, I promised Luciana, silently vowing that I wouldn't let anything tear us apart. But as I stared into her eyes, the severity of our situation grew sharper, more terrifying. Get ready, one of our companions murmured, urgency tangling with fear as the light shrank behind us, the air growing thick with tension. It's now or never. And then, just as a group of dark figures materialized in the threshold, a voice pierced through the chaos, sharp and desperate. Stop! Wait! I turned, shocking recognition flooding through me. My breath caught in my throat, confronting the raw reality of the person stepping forward, someone whose very presence promised to unravel everything I had fought for, and everything I had tried to protect. Luciana! I breathed. A chill of foreboding gripped my heart. What had just stepped into our lives was not merely a ghost. It was a storm about to break free, shattering all the fragile hope we had delicately woven together. The pandemonium in the storeroom quieted for a heartbeat as my eyes locked onto the figure emerging from the shadows. It was Sophia, my sister specter from the past. I thought I'd buried deeper than the pain of our severed relationship. The years had done little to soften the lines of worry etched into her brow, but the fierce light in her eyes was unmistakable. She was here to fight. Stay back, Sophia, I shouted, instinctively stepping in front of Luciana, my protective instincts flaring. The last thing I wanted was for our worlds to collide further, complicating an already perilous situation. Victor is playing with fire, and if you're caught in the blaze, it won't matter how far you've run. Sophia's voice was a mix of urgency and fear, her words slicing through the uncertainty swirling around us like a beacon in the fog. I'm not here to hurt you, but you need to listen. The figures in the doorway hesitated, their movements stilted by the fear that radiated from the tension in the room. I could see the scattered glances among them, a moment fraught with indecision hanging between the light and darkness. Stop, everyone. Marco's voice cut through the air again, unexpectedly commanding. You have no idea what this is about. The storm you walk into, this so-called danger, it's only the start. Then enlighten us. Luciana snapped, her reply laced with desperation. I could feel her small hand squeezing mine, seeking comfort and strength. It's not just Victor you have to deal with, Marco interjected, his eyes narrowing. He's only one piece of a larger puzzle. There are forces at play that would obliterate everything you love, everything you believe. Enough of this, I said, struggling to keep the panic from leaching into my voice. What do you want from us? Why now? I want to save you, Marco hissed, as if the confession burned on his lips. The room felt colder as the weight of his words settled in. Threats are closing in, and if you think you can protect her with sheer will, you're wrong. Love won't shield you from ambition, from power. We need to get out, Sophia interjected, her voice strained but firm. They'll be here any minute. Where's the exit? Follow me and we can find safety. Before I could process, Luciana tugged gently at my arm. We can't leave, can we? Not while the fight is still on. Her eyes were searching mine, desperate for assurance that this was worth the risk, worth the fight that surged within her. It's not just about you anymore. We're tangled in something larger than we imagined. Sophia insisted, urgency creeping beneath her words, her own shield of vulnerability exposed. Victor has eyes and ears everywhere. He won't stop until he takes what's his. What do you know about it? I questioned, my voice tinged with skepticism. The family ties? They've broken us apart, Sophia. You chose your side long ago. I did what I thought was right. She snapped, a flash of hurt igniting her eyes. But this isn't just a game for me, Marco, or even Victor. I came to warn you because I've seen the depths of Victor's lies. I've seen what trying to paint a different story leads to, and it will destroy us all. A deep silence enveloped the room as the figures in the doorway shifted, their bodies taut with anticipation. Then there were sounds of murmurs outside. The impending approach of Victor's followers stirred panic beneath the surface of our front line, the inevitability of confrontation casting a shadow across our fragile unity. We're running out of time, one of the newcomers said urgently, gesturing toward the back of the storeroom. This way. We can escape. Wait, I called out, desperate to analyze the risk. If we leave, we'll lose the only chance we have at understanding this danger. My gaze flickered between Luciana and Sophia, anxiety slithering through each breath I took in this crucible of uncertainty. The weight of my choices crushed down harder than I could bear. The room pulsed with tension amid the chaos lingering like a distant storm, reminding me that every decision I made rippled with consequences, each moment a fragile thread threatening to unravel the woolen fabric of my reality. Just as I resolved to take action, Marco stepped up, cutting through the maelstrom of emotions, and whispered, if you want to truly protect her, there is something I need to tell you. Something you need to know about Victor and troubling secrets that bind us all together. I felt a lump in my throat, hope mingling with dread. With a single voice carrying across the current of despair, I glanced at Luciana, and in that fleeting moment, a profound fear etched itself in my mind. What if this knowledge tore us apart instead of saving us? Before I could usher in what felt like the beginning of an unraveling, a heavy hand slammed against the wall beside me, and the darkness lurking at the entrance coalesced into menacing figures. Their faces were concealed beneath shadows, yet I could sense the malevolence radiating from them. Time is up, one of them shouted, the grim authority shaking the very foundation of our resolve. My heart raced, teetering on the brink of chaos. Yet within the turmoil, A stubborn ember of hope flared for survival. As the shadows surged forward, pulling us back into the abyss, I clung to the fleeting hope that our struggle would lead us to strength, to truth, but I would soon learn that some truths could be more devastating than the darkness itself. The darkness thickened around us, a tangible manifestation of all the fears we had fought to fend off. As I stood there, taking stock of the figures advancing from the entrance, I felt like a marionette caught in strings too strong to sever. My thoughts raced, searching for an escape route where none existed, where light was merely an afterthought within a nightmare spiraling out of control. "Everyone, move!" shouted the figure who had articulated the urgency, his voice intense with authority. Panic ignited at the sight of more shadows creeping toward us, every heartbeat hammering out the stakes of our confinement. I turned to Luciana, fear and determination mingling in her eyes. The flicker of hope I had seen moments before began to dim, but I could see a steely resolve forming. In that moment, I realized that we weren't simply fighting for ourselves anymore. We were battling against a tide of darkness that sought to swallow our truth whole. Together, I whispered to her, the words feeling like threads pulling us together. "No matter what happens, we stay together. Right?" Her voice quivered slightly, but I could see the fire igniting once more. As shouts erupted from outside, it gained momentum, drawing the eyes of our pursuers away from the chaos in the storeroom. It was our chance. "Follow me," I urged, knowing this was the perfect moment to propel ourselves into unknown territory. The figures hesitated, caught between the fear of the unknown and the pressing danger surrounding us. Marco surged ahead, a wild energy fueling him toward the exit. "I'll handle this," he declared, stepping toward the advancing shadows with a surprising confidence. "Just go." "Marco, no." My voice rang out in desperation as I wanted to protest, to pull him back to safety. Yet, he was already lost to the shadows, colliding with the figures, the clash echoing like thunder in our confined space. "Luciana, come on." I took her hand again, not waiting for clarity, simply feeling the urgency drive us forward. Together, we burst through the narrow exit Marco had indicated, a back door that led into a dimly lit hallway cluttered with old equipment and untouched memories. With each step, we moved further from the chaos, but my mind clung to Marco, his figure eclipsed by those shadows. Would we ever really escape this nightmare? The weight of worry felt suffocating. "We can't leave him," I protested, torn as our destination grew further from us. "Staying there means giving ourselves up too," Luciana replied, her voice fierce and unwavering. "We can't let what's happening blind us. We have to find a way to fight back." "All right, okay." I nodded, accepting the truth of her words even if every heartbeat screamed to turn back. "We'll find a way to turn this around." Footsteps thundered in pursuit. I tightened my grip around Luciana's, urging her onward, away from the scenes of chaos that held us in their thrall. We pressed deeper into the building, ducking past equipment that seemed to serve as remnants of lives moved on from, but I felt the urgency of survival pulse alongside our fading hope. "Back door over there," I pointed, spotting a glimmer of light just around the corner. A crash ricocheted behind us, and a loud shout followed. One of the figures had spotted us. My heart raced as we sprinted toward the light, every pulse of adrenaline urging us on. With one last burst of strength, we burst through the door, surprising ourselves at how fiercely the world's sunlight rushed toward us. It illuminated the chaos unfolding beyond the walls we had just escaped. But our relief was short-lived. The moment we emerged, chaos awaited in the courtyard, figures moving like chess pieces in a confounding game. Victor's followers were organizing an army of shadows gearing up to reclaim what had been taken. "Where do we go?" Luciana asked, scanning the area, aware that danger was crouching at the edges of our awareness. "Over there." I pointed toward the fencing at the far end. The separate parts of the estate were no more than strands of glass and metal, barriers that would not yield easily but could buy us precious moments. We ran, dodging shadows and strange flickering lights, fueled by adrenaline as we sprinted for safety. Each scrape of our shoes against the pavement felt like the pulse of our hearts, the beats of uncertainty combining with that never-fading flicker of defiance. But just when we thought we had created some distance, a deafening crash echoed behind us. Marco's sacrifice had been significant, and from the corner of my eye, I glimpsed his figure still engaging with our pursuers. Go! We need to keep moving. His voice broke through the chaos, desperate and urgent. No! I shouted, an instinct taking hold of me as my heart fought against a tide of defeat. I wanted to turn back, to help him. We can't leave him. Jules, this isn't the time. Luciana's features were pale but composed, and I saw the resolve stitching itself back into her being. We have to survive. We have to live to fight another day. As pain etched deeper into my heart, I relented, driven ahead by the weight of her determination holding stronger than my trepidation. Every step away from Marco felt like gutting myself, but I couldn't dissolve into the grief of the moment. I needed focus, strength, and a path ahead. Finally, we reached the fence, huge and imposing. It shimmered in the sunlight, yet before us lay a tangled mass of logistics. Help me boost you up, Luciana ordered, and we climbed, hands wrestling against the cold metal until we finally caught ourselves on the other side. Just when I thought we could breathe, a bark from behind us brought me back to realization. Stop! A voice called, authoritative and cold. The figures were gaining ground, and as I spun around, I saw them coiling like a serpent, their intention palpable. But Luciana had already turned, her expression fierce. We have to fight, she beckoned. What awaited was not simply battle, but the very storm against which we had steeled ourselves. Together, I replied, feeling the crackle of electricity between us that had signified our relationship reborn. For us, the storm of Victor's shadows loomed behind us, ready to consume, but in Luciana's eyes, I saw a shared defiance forge anew. And as I prepared to confront the threat that lay just beyond the horizon, it struck me that we had faced together had reshaped more than our fates. It had taught me that love, despite its fragility, had the power to defy the very darkness that sought to destroy us. As we stepped forward, ready to face the vestige of a destiny that would unfold, her hand slipped into mine, urging me to find strength in the gift of unity. We were not two candles flickering against the storm anymore. We were a willed fear incontainable, igniting hope where none had existed. Let's end this, I shouted, the tremor in my voice belying the strength within. With Luciana beside me, we surged forward, each step echoing a promise that would echo not just within us, but propelling us into a future alive with the intense flame of survival. And so, as the chaos surged around us, ready to consume the very essence of our being, I knew this was our time, our battlefield, and amidst all the pain of what had been lost, we would carve out a place of belonging, one forged in love that outshone the darkness and forever shattered the chains of despair that I in this moment we chose courage, we chose each other, and finally we chose to fight.